Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternities. Ranking all the episodes of Season 4 of Deep Space Nine, so it's my favorite time of the year where I get to, once I finish covering a season of Star Trek, I get to look back on it and rank all the episodes of that particular season from my least favorite to my favorite. Season 4 Deep Space Nine, this is where I seem to differ from the masses. I was just watching several YouTube videos and about Season 4 Deep Space Nine, and they pronounce it's one of the best of the show and a really great season. I've seen several videos that say that, and more than that, I've read a lot of comments and online reviews and tons of stuff that all seem to speak very highly of Season 4. And as I said, this is where I differ from people. In fact, I've talked about this before on my channel, the whole opinion, the wrong opinion that Season 4 is when Deep Space Nine got good. And that you might as well just skip the first 3 seasons, which is wild, absolutely wild to me, especially saying skip season 3. It's absolutely wild that anyone would have that ridiculous notion. And plus, I think season 4 is something I talk about a lot as I was covering it. It's kind of a misrepresentation of Deep Space Nine because it has the Klingons being the villains, which they're not for the most of the show. And so I think it's flat out objectively incorrect to tell people to start watching the show in season 4. It's just wrong. But you know what? As much as, and I rail against the whole Klingons being villains a lot. But as much as I hate that, I do acknowledge that doesn't take up the entire season. It's only 7 or 8 episodes or something like that. So I always look back on season 4 as having really strong writing and really good episodes, and that being the season that the writers started hitting their stride. But when I went back and actually rewatched it just now and paid close attention, analyzed or whatever, I noticed there's a lot of mediocre slop in this season. That is really only the start of the season and the end of the season that had really, really good episodes. That in the middle, I mean, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, that middle is just one sort of unremarkably kind of poor episode after another. And I know that I differ from the people who love this season like these particular episodes that I thought were just boring or not good. So I know I have a different opinion than most people on this. But for me, yeah, it was kind of a slog to get through. And it's funny because, as I said, most people totally disagree with me, but my sister totally agrees with me that season 4 was not as good as season 3. And yeah, it was just a bunch of 4s. So I give ratings for every episode between a 1 and a 10. And a lot of seasons I'll talk about how it favors one rating over the other. There's several seasons I said was the season of the 7. This is the season of the 4. Now granted there's only 6 of them, but still is by far the most rating I've given this season was a 4 out of 10. So let's look at the averages. I always average out the ratings that I give 1 through 10. The average rating that I gave for season 4 is a 6.12 Now, just for reference, that is lower than what I gave season 3, which was a 7.9, so significantly lower. It's also lower than when I gave season 2, a 6.39. Now, it is higher than season 1, and I gave it 5.6. But when we look at TNG, it's lower than season 3, season 4, season 6, and season 7. TNG, beats out season 1 and 2, which is easy to do because those suck and have terrible ratings. But it also beats out season 5, to be fair. 6.04 is what I gave season 5. So it's just slightly higher than that with a 6.12. And I had been on the record, and again, this is another thing I disagree with a lot of people about, but I've been on the record saying season 5 is my least favorite good season of TNG. That's leaving out the first 2, which are obviously the worst. But setting those aside, season 5 was my least favorite because I thought it had a lot of boring episodes in it. And and so season 4 just barely beats that out. So it's also lower than both season 1 and 2 of Voyager, but I'll get to season 2 of Voyager next video. But the thing is that, and I talk about this whenever I bring up the average episode ratings, that it doesn't necessarily reflect how I feel about the season as a whole, because it's just rating each episode from a rating from 1 to 10. It doesn't take into factors in the account of the overall feel and tone of the season and how it comes off and how it improves the show and stuff like that. So I would actually say that I think season 4 is better than season 2 of Deep Space Nine, even though it got a lower rating than it. I think that season 2 was a bit more boring and dull at some places, when season 4 really, really hits, it hits harder. Like, the good episodes of season 4 are much better than the good episodes of season 2. I mean, season 2 had Whispers and Crossover and the Circle Trilogy and The Wire, which are all good, but like, I'd rather watch the good episodes like The Visitor, The Quickening stuff in season 4. I think it was far superior to all of that. So when season 4 hits, it really hits. And I think overall it had better writing. It's just all those damn 4s, all those mediocre episodes just really did in the rating, the average rating. But I think overall, I think the production quality, the writing quality, and stuff like that was actually just better in season 4 than it was in season 2. It's just, again, the problem with season 4 is they did this whole Klingons are the enemies BS. Now, of course, season 5 is what I'm going to get to next. And from memory, I do believe that I do think season 5 is lower than season 2. I do think, even though I'll say I like season 4 better than season 2, I think season 2 might be better than season 5. Only slightly. Because, and I'll get to, in season 5, I probably disagree with people more on, because I think that's like my second least favorite season of the show, where most people would say it's the second best of the shows. That I totally don't get. But I'll get to that when I get to that. So there's less of disparity when we're talking about season 4, because I can see how good it is. But so many people called it the best season of the show, and I totally disagree with that. I think it's easily season 3 is the best season of the show, followed by 6 and 7. And then comes 4 after that. And so it's like the 4th out of 7. So far from best of the show, in my humble opinion. But anyway, let's go ahead. Well, actually, no, before I jump into the episodes, I gotta mention The other thing I mentioned, other than the average rating, is how many episodes are a poor rating and how many are positive rating, or a negative rating, I should say, and how many are positive. Because my scale that I use, 1 through 5 are negative ratings, 6 through 10 is positive ratings. And the ratio this season actually is not very good. It's, I believe it's 11 negatives to 13 positives. So it's nearly half and half. And that's not a good ratio, because season 2 of TNG, which as I mentioned is terrible, has a half and half positive, half negative, and that's a very, very bad season. And so for this season to be close to that is not good. But there's some nuance in there, because season 2, the majority of episodes there are 2 and 3s, whereas there's only 1 1, 1 2, 1 3 in season 4, and the rest are 4s and 1 5. So it's mostly 4s, as I said. This is the season of the 4. So that's definitely better than season 2. So just saying the ratio is similar is kind of missing the nuance, but still, it's not a good ratio. But anyway, anyway. You know, the other thing I would mention about season 4, and this actually applies to both seasons of Star Trek that aired in the 95 through 96 season, so that's season 4 DS9 and season 2 of Voyager. It's, for some reason, this was the year they decided to do a lot of episodes about suicide. It's like the theme of both seasons was they just kept bringing up suicide. In Deep Space Nine, they brought up 4 episodes: Sons of Moog, Hard Time, The Quickening, and Body Parts. I forgot to mention Body Parts previously when I talked about this in other videos, because Quark was trying to kill himself, or to get someone else, to get Garrick to kill him. And then in Voyager, there was Death Wish, which is the whole, the episode revolved around the topic of this guy wanting to commit suicide. And then there was also Life Signs, where the Vidian woman wanted to commit suicide because of she thought she was ugly or whatever. So, yeah, why do they keep bringing up suicide this year? It's a weird that, and I never noticed this before, that this was the year of suicide episodes. Let's go ahead and jump into my ratings, for my rankings, I should say, for season 4. As per normal, there's going to be a card that flashes on the screen that says the rating I'm about to give this next batch of episodes. We'll start, of course, with the 1, which is the worst rating, and move up from there. So let's go ahead and get started. Coming in at number 24, my least favorite episode of season 4 of DS9, the one and only one rating that gets the worst rating, and that is #Fuck the Muse, otherwise known as the Muse. This was in my top 10 worst episodes of the entire franchise. So yes, definitely this one you should have seen coming a million miles away, that this would be my number 1 worst. I think it's a abysmal, terrible episode. Has 2 plots, A plot, B plot, and both are equally, absolutely horrendous, terrible. A lot of people give the Loxana Troy storyline a pass and say it's okay. Those people are objectively wrong. It is absolutely terrible. It is sitcomish. It is out of character for both Loxana and Odo. And yeah, it's just a silly sitcom BS, silly crap where Odo's the guy is like, oh, profess your love to Odo, to Loxana, and when Odo says this bullshit, he's like, oh, I can see you really love her now, so I'm just gonna fuck off. Bullshit. That is terrible. And then the B plot, which is equally as bad, with Jake and the stupid Muse, and the Muse going, "Ooh, Jake, this is how you write. Make sure to use an apostrophe." Ooh. And that's a sign of, like, they don't know how to write for Jake. This is the problem I said before. They thought it was cool to say, "Oh, let's have this character not join Starfleet," but you doomed him to obscurity, and he's supposed to be a main character, and you never know what to do with him anymore now that he's not in Starfleet. So you have to. This is their pathetic attempt to try to give him something to do. Well, he's a writer, so what can we do with the writer? Let's have this dangerous Muse come up and manipulate him, which is just like the Sirens cliche that's been done in fiction, like, repeatedly over and over and over fucking over again. Actually, as I said before, like, I thought this storyline could have actually been good if they just dropped the whole, like, magical Muse sucking energy, what, Sirens cliche. They got rid of that, just making a normal person who's middle-aged, who sees Jake and his potential, and seduces him and manipulates him, is trying to manipulate him into doing bad things, but not using any fucking magical sci-fi powers, just a normal person. It might actually be interesting, but this was terrible. Anyway. Alright, so next we'll get into my 2 rated episode, only one of them, as I said, where I gave it a 2 out of 10, and that is number 23, Rules of Engagement. I do believe most people like this episode better than I do. This is the episode that exemplifies why I don't think the Klingons should be villains or the enemy antagonists of the season. I think this comes off really wrong. The Klingon lawyer is acting more like a Romulan. Not that, all Klingons have to be monocultures and act exactly the same. I do like the fact that we see a Klingon lawyer, but he's still, like, they don't need to be in monoculture, but they still need to act like Klingons instead. This is like the way that they're, like, trying to manipulate the Federation or whatever. It just seems so out of character for them, and it's also, like, such a dumb cliche about, let's see what's in Worf's heart and blah blah blah, and a lot of, like, the dialogue interaction between the lawyer and Sisko was, like, dumb. Like, the Klingon lawyer just gave away their whole scheme. And, like, why? Like, what? Like, why would you do that? And plus, this episode's pretentious. It tries to do this artsy thing. Where they, someone goes on, gives their testimony, and we see the flashback, but they're talking to the camera. It's like, ooh, look at them. No, I hate this episode. And I know not everyone does, but I hate it. Alright, so now we'll get to my 3 rated episode, and I will give the disclaimer that when I reviewed this episode for my channel recently, I gave it a 4 out of 10. But I am downgrading that 4 to a 3 now. So it's now officially a 3. And this, again, is another fan favorite that a lot of people love. And that is Little Green Men. Look, I think the concept of Quark, Rom, and Nog going back in time and being the Roswell aliens, like, that's a funny concept. But what they actually did with it was actually just boring. Like, I didn't really find this episode funny at all. Like, I got a slight giggle when that scene where that dude's interrogating trying to torture Rom, and Rom's just like, I want my Moogie, and Nog's just going crazy. It's like, we're going to invade you, we're going to invade Cleveland. Like, that scene got a slight little giggle out of me. But other than that, I didn't find it the least bit fun. Okay, there was also that thing when when Nog saw the Cisco being Gabriel Bell and Quark dismissing that being all humans look alike. So that was the one funny joke. And that other part kind of made me giggle. The rest of the episode was just boring ass. It was just walking, talking, 60s sci-fi schlock cliches. There's the friendly nurse and the kind scientist, but the gruff general, and they were just sitting in the room the entire time being interrogated. Like, that's wasn't funny, wasn't interesting, it was actually kind of dumb, and I really don't like watching this episode. So sorry to ever, and I really don't get why people like it. I really don't get it. Is it just they just like the premise? Because I like the premise too, but you gotta actually pay attention to the goddamn episode. And so, what do you like about it? Like, I just don't know. Alright, so now we get to the 4 rated episodes, and as I said, we will be here for a little while. We'll start with my number 21, which is Crossfire, which I was also thinking about downgrading to a 3. And yeah, there was someone I was watching who thought this was one of the best episodes of the season. I'm like, what? I don't get it. And as I said, like, the premise of the episode is something I can relate to, unrequited love, and how that's being shoved in your face, and how that's, difficult to deal with. The problem is that it doesn't work for these characters. That Odo is acting like an angsty teen. He's 100% out of character this whole episode. And Shakar is a fucking boring, plain, bland blah 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 in this episode, and he doesn't seem attractive or interesting at all. He just seems boring, and the romance between Kara and Shakar is even worse than the romance between Kara and Bareil. And like, they have this off-screen menace of the true way. There was also an off-screen menace in Armand Bashir, and they're very incidental to the episode. Worf just catches them off screen, so what the fuck? No. Boring episode. So, next we'll get to my number 20, which is The Sword of Kahless. I often fall asleep during this episode. It's just the gold fever cliche. Look, I like seeing Core, and it's interesting seeing Core and Worf, but then they turn it into the boring ass gold fever cliche. What's it called? The something is the Sierra Madrid whatever movie with Humphrey Bogart. It's just that. They even admitted they were just doing that. It was just a gold fever. Oh, there's the Sword of Chaos. And this funny thing to me is that fans came up with this theory that the sword had some technology or magical powers that forced Worf and Core to go mad, but the writers were like, no, it's just a normal sword. It's just them going mad on their own. But the reason why these fans came up with it is because it's unbelievable. Because it's out of character for them to just go mad and try to kill each other for no reason. Anyway. Get into my number 19, which is Starship Down. Yeah, this is getting really sleepy here. So, Starship Down started out good, where the concept with the Defiant being attacked by Jim Hadar, going to a gas giant, and they're trying to protect these Karma ships. But then it turned into a disaster cliche, and I don't mind a disaster cliche on its own. Like the TNG episode, Disaster, was a fairly good episode. But every storyline in this disaster cliche sucks. Like, is Kira and Cisco completely 100% out of character. Worf is out of character, not knowing how to deal with junior officers. He fucking knows how to deal with junior officers. We've seen it on TNG. And what was the other? Oh, Quark and the other dude being trapped in this room with the torpedo, talking about how gambling's great. Like, that was cheesy. That was dumb. The only interesting storyline that was done well was, Dax and Bashir being stuck in the thing, but nothing really happened in that storyline. It was kind of a nothing storyline. So yeah, this episode kind of just falls apart. Anyway, so next we'll get into my number 18. Hard Time. Another disagreement I know everyone will have. People seem to love this episode. And, okay, I can kind of get why they love the episode, because I can see what this episode is trying to do. It's trying to make commentary on a very important issue, PTSD. And in some ways it does it well, and it features some really, really good acting. Several problems with this episode, though. First one being that the fact that this goes away immediately after the episode ends completely undermines the episode. And I've heard people argue, like, oh, Star Trek does that a lot, and blah, blah, blah. And it does, and I hate it when it does every single time. But the whole point of this episode, like the entire point of this episode, is that something like this traumatic PTSD. I mean, O'Brien's fucking suicidal by the end of the episode. That doesn't go away. Like, the whole point of the episode is that trauma like that does not instantly go away. And then the episode ends, and it instantly goes away. It undermines the entire point. Like, there's this line where Cisco said, oh, you can't expect this to just go away overnight. And I was yelling at the screen. It's like, but it does. It does go away overnight. God. And so here's the thing. Like, the original concept of this episode was to be about what's-her-face, Cedo, Ensign Cedo from the episode Lower Decks and First Duty, about her returning from being captured and tortured by the Cardassians, and her dealing with PTSD. And that would have worked because you don't have to see that character again. It could have been a guest character for one episode and maybe see it like a year or two later. You don't have to have them week to week where you just ignore it and have it instantly go away. And plus, this whole Brian must suffer thing, I think, was taken to a dumb extreme in this episode. And also, by the way, they're fucking the aliens form of punishment, the whole penal system of injecting 20 years of memory makes no fucking practical sense whatsoever. It's just going to make people more violent. It's not going to take them away from society. It's just going to shove them back into society and make them more violent because they're traumatized. Like, it makes zero sense whatsoever. And on top of that, the whole e-car, thing where the fun roommate and they learn together, that it was so predictable and so cliche. I was just like, this. But anyway, I know a lot of people love this episode. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 17, which is A Session. And to be fair, I don't hate this episode. Like, I used to really hate this episode before, and I don't hate it as much as I used to. But the way it retcons the wormhole aliens, and this is where they turn into the prophets and not the wormhole aliens, and the way they retcon them is kind of inconsistent with their characters. I don't like what it does for them, because the original concept of the wormhole aliens was that they were these strange aliens that existed outside of time, so they appeared as if they were gods to a more primitive culture. But here they're saying, no, we actually are gods. And also, it doesn't really make sense that they're acting like they know who Cisco is and they call him the Cisco, but they're supposed to be non-linear, so that means they should have known that when they first met him, right? It just doesn't add up. And also, like, that priest dude just kills someone because they wouldn't follow the genres, and they're also retconning the role of the emissary, acting like he has political power, which is, why did the Circle fucking attack Cisco? If he was this religious icon with political power, then why didn't Cisco just tell them, hey, stop this queue? And it's like, okay, we gotta do what the emissary says. And because that's what Kara says in this episode. She's like, oh, Cisco, if you would have exerted this power, we would have listened to you. Bullshit. This episode just annoys me. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 16, which is Sons of Moog. As I said, I'm getting very sleepy talking about these episodes. Ruins Kern's character. Even the actor who plays him, Tony Todd, thought this, and I totally 100% agree with him. He was very unhappy. He said in an interview that he didn't read the script before he agreed to do it, and had he had read the script first, he wouldn't have agreed to do it. Which, good on him. I wish that happened, because what did wipe his memory? And this whole, like, this goes beyond the whole clans being enemies to Worf's being disaccommodated a fucking again, which is just a tired repeat of a storyline that was already done well, already resolved, and this seemed to come out of fucking nowhere. Just, oh, Garon, you pissed me off, so you're exiled, and now we have to deal with, like, this House of Moog. Who are all these people who are in the House of Moog, by the way? Who are all the servants, and who else is in this fucking house? But it's being dismantled, and I don't know. It's I just don't like it. There's one good scene, though, which is probably why it gets a 4. And it's probably why it's as high as it is, where Sisko yells at Jen, Zia, and Worf. That was a good scene. There's a limit to what I'll tolerate, and you've just reached it. That's a great scene. But anyway, the rest of the episode's boring. Alright, next we'll get to my number 5, and I think I said earlier there's only one of these, which I'm wrong. There's actually 2 of them, and they're both episodes are related to each other. So first we will get into my number 15, which is Return to Grace. The episode where they make Dukat the hero. Yeah, I know he's being a dick to Kira. He's hitting on her, and he's being egotistical, wanting his fucking position back. But at the end of the episode, he learns that his position isn't everything, and he turns it down. So he goes on the hero's journey. Like, Dukat's fucking Hitler. He's fucking Goebbels or something. He ran Bajor concentration camp where he worked people to death and sexually abused them. He is not a fucking hero, and never should be a goddamn hero. Not even to this degree. Period. And also, the Klingons are the villains going around attacking the innocent Cardassians. Like, what the fuck? Like, no, this is not what should be happening. Now, that being said, it is a good episode, which is why it gets up to a 5. Even though those things really bother me and hold me down. It's an introduction of Damar, so that's something. And I like the interactions between Kira and Zial, and that's interesting. The whole thing with Kira learning that, Zial shouldn't be in this kind of life because it's what she did, and she doesn't want that for someone else. And so that was good. But overall. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 14, which is Indiscretion. As I said, the episodes are related. This is the introduction of Zial, but this is episode kind of boring. Like, and again, like, Kira's kind of buddying up to Dukat, and they're having a laugh, and he sits on the spike, ha ha ha, isn't it funny? He's fucking Hitler! Shouldn't be hanging out and having a laugh with Hitler, I'm sorry. But more than that, the episode's just boring. Like I expect us to care about some Kira's best friend on this ship that we never heard about before because it happened off screen before we met her. So why should we care? I don't know. And it doesn't bother me quite as much as Return to Grace, which is why I put it higher, because Return to Grace has made Dukat more of a hero and it made the Klingons the villains, whereas this episode is just kind of boring. And the introduces the Breen. I mean, we actually see the Breen for the first time, like we've heard them over and over. It's like kind of a running joke where in TNG they would just mention the Breen and we never see them. We finally get to see them in this episode, and they just ripped off the Princess Leia bounty hunter costume from Return of the Jedi. But then that became a whole thing. Yeah, and they ended up becoming like a major species after that. So yeah, I guess it's fine. So next we'll get into my number 13, which is my one and only 6 rated episode. Bar Association. And this episode is as high as it is because I do love the political commentary about this episode, particularly the scene which I cut out and put up as a video on my channel, and the video was entitled How the Rich Get the Poor to Vote Against Their Own Interests. And that's the scene where Rom says, "Oh, but you don't understand. Ferengi workers don't want to stop the exploitation. They want to become the exploiters." And Bashir responds by saying, "Well, suit yourself, but I don't see you exploiting anyone." Which I think is amazing. That boils down a lot of why people vote for politicians that they shouldn't vote for, because well, there's also like social manipulation, religious manipulation, stuff like that, but also, oh well, I'm going to be rich one day, so I don't want to punish the rich, which is total bullshit. But and yeah, and there's also good commentary about unions and Rom trying to form a union and all that sort of thing. And it was somewhat interesting storyline with Rom and Quark trying to find their new dynamic. But I have a huge bone to pick with this episode because I think the whole premise is faulty because it relies on Quark being able to gouge his workers and not give them sick pay or vacation pay, and saying, citing Ferengi laws. Who gives a fuck about Ferengi laws? You are on a Federation-run Bajoran space station. You go, if I made this analogy, if someone moves from China and they move to New York City, they can't operate their store by Chinese laws. They're in New York City. They have to follow New York City laws. You're on a Bajoran space station run by Starfleet. You are following Bajoran laws. Ferengi laws mean dick. And Brunt should have no fucking power, and he should have been thrown in prison for trying to have Quark killed, regardless of Quark pressing charge. Who gives a fuck if Quark presses charges? Odo shouldn't care. They should throw the book at him, as they say. But so yeah, the logic in this episode is very faulty and annoys the fuck out of me, which is why I couldn't give it higher than a 6. But I gave it at least a 6 because I really do appreciate the political commentary. Alright, so next we get to my 7 rated episodes, starting with my number 12, Body Parts, going in right from one Ferengi episode next to another, right from one Brunt episode next to another. I was surprised, if I'm honest, how much I liked this episode upon rewatch, but I had to be honest with myself, because I remember not liking this episode very much, and I shouldn't let that prejudgment influence what I think about this episode, because it's Upon watching it, I actually thought it was a really good character story for Quark because it explored the aspect of Quark about how he thinks of himself as true Ferengi and being loyal and to Ferengi culture, but in actuality, he's been softened by being off-world for so long and being exposed to the Federation and Bajorans, and has taken some of their values on board, and is actually, and that's a good thing because Ferengi culture is misogynistic and greedy and so not good. So the getting away from Ferengi culture is a very good thing. And he's become a better person, but he refuses to admit it to himself. But Brunt sees it, and Brunt, representing the worst aspects of an already terrible culture, hates him for it, and so tries to have him killed. But then Quark realizes that his true assets, his true value, was being a better person. Being a better person is its own reward because his friends come to help him when he's in need. And so that's a powerful message. I do like that. I do think it annoys me that the whole problem of this episode could have been avoided if Quark just went and saw Bashir like Rom suggested, but whatever. The B plot I wasn't that big of a fan of because the whole baby getting transferred into Keiko, like, I was expecting this to be a more interesting storyline. I thought they should have had it where like the runabout was damaged and actually showed it, but instead it all happened off screen, so it was kind of boring. There was like no conflict to the storyline, but anyway. Next we get into my number 11, which is Shattered Mirror. And again, I like this episode a little bit better than I thought. I do stand by, though, that each Mirror Universe episode gets worse, like progressively worse. Like Crossover was really great. Through the Looking Glass, not as good. And this one, maybe only slightly less quality than Through the Looking Glass. They're both the episodes, I would say, kind of on par with each other, but this one I think is more silly. Like the Mirror Universe characters are less believable and more campy and cheesy to a point where I don't really care about them. In fact, if it wasn't for the Jake Jennifer storyline, I would probably hate this episode. But the battles, who gives a fuck about the battles? I don't like. What I talked about in my review. In order for me to like a battle scene, I have to be invested in the outcome of the battle, invested in the characters, and I wasn't. I couldn't care less about these stupid Terran rebellion or whatever. But the Jake and Jennifer storyline, where Jennifer treats Jake as the son she never had, and Jake sees it as the resurrection of his mother, and how that would emotionally affect both of them, plus Cisco adding him into the mix, where he's like pissed off with Jennifer for abducting Jake and not willing to forgive her, where she's sensing a connection between her, and then she's taking away from them by being killed and having experienced the whole tragedy of losing Jennifer over again. Like, that's powerful stuff. So, so I still say that it's not as good as Through the Looking Glass, but no, it's better than I thought. So next, we'll get into my number 10, which is Broken Link, the season finale, which 7 is a respectable rating. I'm not saying it's terrible, but I think it's easily the worst season finale of Deep Space Nine. It's not finale worthy, in my opinion. It's just, most of the episode is Odo lying in bed being grumpy. But there's good things about this episode, though. The whole, I do really like that there's consequences for Odo killing another changeling, and it is manipulative of the changelings to infect him with disease to force him to go back in order to be judged. And it is, interesting character exploration of Odo, and And we get the moment with Garrick where he tries to wipe out the Founders and Worf kicks his ass. So that was interesting too. And of course, the ending is probably the best thing about the episode. The shocking ending where Otis says Gowron's the changeling. Like that, I remember that being like, whoa, like hitting me like a ton of bricks. So that is the powerful ending. But yeah, it's not like a really special episode. Other than that ending, I don't really think it deserves to be the finale. But that's just my humble. Alright, so getting into my 8 rated episodes, starting with my number 9, which is Army and Bashir. Yeah, this is another one I enjoyed a bit more on a rewatch because it's one of the silly holodeck episodes that I actually enjoy. It actually worked for me because I think the character stories are very good, and of course it allowed the actors to be all hammy and cheesy and be James Bond villains and stuff like that. And Avery Brooks is amazing as a cheesy James Bond villain. One of the times where his overacting is a positive. But yeah, it's interesting having Garrick there being the surrogate for the audience, pointing out how silly the whole James Bond thing is, and actually has Bashir standing up to Garrick for the first time. It's when he starts to really grow as a character. And of course the crisis is all just, one big contrivance excuse in order to have the plot of the episode. But yeah, I think the plot is actually very engaging and interesting. And I typically hate Trapped in a Holodeck episodes where the safety's malfunctions, which is that happens here. But it's technically, they're not trapped. They could leave if they wanted to, it's just they would kill all the senior officers if they did. So I guess they're, kind of trapped, but not really, but sort of. Anyway, yeah, it was a fun episode, actually. Unlike Bada Bing Bada Bang, which 100% is not fun. But anyway, we'll get to my number 8, which is For the Cause. Yeah, so this is actually a pretty good episode, too. I wish that they explained the Maquis more and where they're at the moment. They did kind of say that they're thriving with the Cardassians being attacked by the Klingons, but I wish they got a bit more specific about it. But it was a really good character story for Sisko. I didn't think it would be, but yeah, they sort of explore his relationship with Cassidy Yates and how he had to sort of pretend that everything was fine when he was around her, but really he thought he was worried that she was working for the Maquis. And it turned out that she was, but she was just smuggling medical supplies. So that's something that couldn't be forgiven. She only spent 6 months in prison or whatever. But there was a lot of really good, like the fact that she came back for him, even though she knew it meant she would be arrested. Like there was some really good, powerful character stuff. And of course, the reveal that Eddington was working for the Maquis and manipulating everything was a really good twist. So I totally disagree with this dumbass speech about the Federation being like the Borg, but it was still a really good twist. So next we'll get into my number 7, which is The Way of the Warrior, which I gave it a rating of an 8, and it's number 7 of the entire season, which ain't too shabby, but I know a lot of people be saying it's not good enough because some people put this in their top 10 of the entire show, which I think is way overhyping this episode. It's nowhere near that good, but just my humble opinion. I mean, this episode's fine. As I said, I don't like the fact that it has the Klingons as the villains, or that Worf gets exiled yet again, which is so repetitive. But I think if they made it so the Klingons didn't become the enemies permanently, and this was just a one-off thing, it would have been a much better episode. But even if I, judge the episode on its own merits, it is really well written. A lot of characters have something to do. It isn't just about Worf. You see Dax and Kira in the Holosuites, and you see, O'Brien getting to know, Worf and saying, oh, because they know each other, and Odo having to deal with, the fact that his, what his people would do, and Garrick sort of in Quark. That root beer scene's overrated though, but still. So there's good things I like about this episode. It was kind of epic, but I didn't think the battle was the best thing in the world. I much prefer the battles in the Dominion War because I was more invested in Dominion War. Well, I'm not really that invested in Klingons being the enemies, but whatever. Still a good episode. Like, again, giving an 8 out of 10 being 7th highest for the season is not shabby at all, but I just don't think it's, the greatest thing since sliced bread. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 6, which is To the Death. Really, really enjoyed this episode. Maybe wasn't that much substance to it, but it did explore the Jem'Hadar. It definitely developed them more than any episode does and made them come off as more sort of tangible, more real. And it's very interesting having Sisko and the Defiant crew having to work with the Jem'Hadar on a mission to stop these rogue Jem'Hadar. And we meet Weyoun, Jeffrey Combs' Weyoun, which they loved so much they had to invent an entire background of Vorta's being clones in order to bring this character back, which I see why. He was so good in this episode, and there was a lot of really good interactions between them. So yeah, and it was an exciting action-packed episode. So yeah, it's a good episode. Alright, so now we get into my 9 rated episodes, stepping things up a bit. We'll get to my number 5, which is Hippocratic Oath. I do love this episode a lot. I side with Bashir. I think O'Brien was wrong for doing what he did because, and this wasn't from a humanitarian perspective, from a strictly selfish Federation perspective, what he was doing could have safeguarded the lives of Federation citizens. It could have actually prevented the Dominion War from ever happening, because if he would fostered a rebellion of Jem'Hadar who are not violent, who want to forego the Dominion ways and fight against them, that would be a very good thing. Now, whether or not Bashir actually would have been able to, find a cure for Ketracel White, well, he seemed to think he was close, so I think it was worth a shot, and it was wrong over Brian. But I love that sort of, even if people disagree with me, I love that complexity of the episode, that it makes you think, that it ponders these questions. And as Scott McDonald always loved, he does a great job acting, and so you add that in, and the B plot with Worf trying to act like Odo, that needed to happen. It was fine. But yeah, that main A plot though was so good. So next we'll get into my number 4, which is nearly a 10, but not quite. And that is Homefront and Paradise Lost. The two-parter where Starfleet, where Sisko and Odo return to Earth because the changelings have invaded Earth. Now, I have mixed feelings about the fact that this two-parter is a bait and switch, because the first part promises to be about this espionage, find the changeling infiltrators and they could destroy Earth. But it turns out to be the real problem, real threat, is not from the changelings, but from a Starfleet admiral who is attempting a military coup in the name of self-defense. So I have mixed feelings about that, because I felt kind of betrayed, especially when I first saw this second part. I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be about changeling infiltrators, which is something I don't think they ever fully addressed why Starfleet wasn't fully infiltrated by the changelings. So I was a bit disappointed about that. But, on the other hand, it has very, very strong political commentary about how corrupt authoritarian regimes can use fear and the excuse of self-defense as an excuse to grab more power and take freedoms away from people. And the funny thing is that this episode came out in 95, but it became even more relevant, like so incredibly relevant in the early 2000s with the post 9/11 hysteria. And it's also quite relevant right now, for that matter. But so I love it for that. Even though I wasn't happy with the bait and switch, but the bait and switch also, again, I have mixed feelings about it because it does the job that producers wanted it to do, which was to get everyone in the same mindset as the characters of, oh yeah, we gotta fear the changelings, and then switch it on you, be like, haha, you the audience were falling into the same trap that the characters were, and not thinking about respecting how freedoms should be expected even in the most dire situations. So it was really actually interesting that how they did it that way. So I do really love this two-parter a lot. But yeah, not quite a 10. Almost there. Alright, so now we get to my 10 rated episodes, the best of the best, starting with my number 3, which is Rejoined. And I know practically everyone does not like this episode as much as I do. In fact, I just saw a bunch of people who say it's mediocre. I've actually learned, the more I watch this episode, the more I like it. The more I analyze it, the more I pay attention to it, the more powerful I think it is. I think this is one of the best romance stories of the entire Star Trek franchise, and that's not just because it features the same-sex couple. It's the way it does it. Like, there's good commentary in that. Like, the analogy is very clear because the episode is about two people in love being denied that love because of societal norms. So there's a lot of definitely commentary analogy there, but it's not a one-to-one analogy because it also has to do with getting back with your ex, which is a totally different topic, and also trills and how trills, it actually makes sense for them to experience more in life and not repeat it. But for people who say, oh, I actually agree with the trill taboo that they shouldn't get back together with previous hosts, here's the thing. Yes, you can agree with that concept, but the problem is in the episode, it's enforced by the threat of death. Like, if you do this romance that society thinks is bad, that we will exile you and your symbiont will die. That is wrong. Whether you agree with whether trills should reassociate with past lovers or not, you can have that opinion that is wrong, but to try to enforce it by the threat of death is wrong. That is flat out wrong, whether you agree with it or not. And so that's where I think the analogy is most powerful. It has to do with how LGBT were discriminated against. And unlike The Outcast, which also tried to make commentary on LGBTQ discrimination, this episode was brave enough to actually feature a same-sex couple kiss. Now, I think the producers and Rick Berman let them get away with it because they were women, and it was actually kind of a trend in the mid-90s of shows that have hot women kissing each other. But the directors and producers like Avery Brooks, who directed an amazing job, made sure, like, their whole intention was like, this is not going to be a gimmick. This isn't going to be like Roseanne or Friends. We're not going to have it just be this flash gimmick for ratings. This is a love story, a romance story that just happened to be the same gender or the same sex, but This is, but they're not going to focus on the gimmick of it all. They're going to focus on how this is a true. And I think they did an amazing job. I think the actors really put a lot of effort into it. I think the script was really powerful, and I think it makes very strong commentary. Now, it does have a plot where they're trying to create some wormhole bullshit, but that bothers me less and less, because I think that the main storyline and the scenes, especially the scenes where the kiss, was like very powerful, the way that the actors played this. So I think this is one of the best romances in the entire franchise. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 2, which is The Visitor, something most people will agree with me on. Talking about, again, a very emotionally powerful episode. One, probably, I was going to say one of the best, but actually I scratched that. The best use of Jake Sisko. That really explore in a very tragic way, and some people have made analogies to things like fathers who are having to watch their sons go through drug addiction and problems like that. That's what Sisko was kind of dealing with when he would flash back into existence and see that Jake was ruining his life because he's obsessed with bringing his father back, and how Benjamin was like, no, you can't ruin your life for me now. The tragedy of that is just absolutely powerful. It just had me in tears. And I love also the framing device of the episode with the young woman coming to visit the older Jake Sisko because she wants to be a writer, and him sort of putting that story. It's really touching. Really, really touching, powerful episode. So, now we will get into my number 1 favorite episode of season 4, which is, I believe, it was in my top 10 favorite episodes of the entire franchise. Not just Deep Space Nine. It's my top 5 of Deep Space Nine. It's my top 10 of the entire franchise, and that is The Quickening. Not only is this a really good episode for Bashir, it's the first really great episode that fully establishes this as a great character, a well-rounded, interesting character, where he is forced to confront his arrogance head on and admit that he was wrong to think that he could just cure this disease in a week, and how he struggles to try to cure this uncurable, like genetically engineered by the Dominion disease. And he should realize that Dominion technology is far beyond what Starfleet knows. In fact, him trying to save them at first just makes everyone worse. He does more damage than good at first, and that's a very interesting character story for Bashir to come face to face with this. And then when he's unable to cure it, he is able to get a vaccine, which is a miracle, is far more than what anyone's managed to do in centuries, so they're completely thankful for that. But for him, it's not good enough. He still kind of feels like he failed, because all those people, millions of people, will still die from this disease because he wasn't able to find a cure, and so he tortures himself over that. And that's so powerful. It is so powerful. Such a good character story, but it's more than just a character story for Bashir. It also touches on, again, very interesting concepts. As I said, suicide. There were 6 episodes this year that tackled that. I think this is the best by far, because it deals with terminally ill assisted suicide, and how Trevian's a well-rounded character. People who say he's a villain, I think, are wrong. It's actually because he's coming from a good place. He's trying to do good. He's trying to help people. He's trying to stop suffering. And Bashir doesn't understand it. He doesn't see it that way. And this is the determination I came to. That in this episode, the writer's intention, or the intention of this episode, is not for you to take Bashir's side. It's not for you to take Trevian's side either. It's for you to see both of their points of views, and how the truth kind of falls somewhere in the middle there. And I think that was actually brilliant. were really, really well done. And yeah, I think that because, yes, there is a lot of nobility intervene trying to prevent suffering, but at the same time he's become very cynical to the point of rejecting any help. And then he has to be humbled at the end of the episode when Bashir actually does find a vaccine. And you have that line from him when Bashir tells him it will be a task to make sure everyone gets it, but he says not a task, a privilege. And that is just such a powerful line. And that's not even mentioning his nurse, Ikoria, and the storyline she goes through, where she actually has hope and she wants to see the birth of her child, and she forces herself to stay alive long enough to see the birth of her child, and then she lets go and immediately dies, like right after, and the child, of course, is free of the blight, and the vaccine actually worked. That was it has me in tears. That scene, that was such a powerful, this is just such an emotionally powerful episode. This is why I think this is one of the best of the franchise, and also, by the way, one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated episode of Star Trek, because the people don't give this episode the due that it deserves. It is so powerful, so good. Even Alexander Siddig and Terry Farrell loved this episode. And Ira Stephen Bear. So no, this is a very, very good, powerful episode. So my favorite episode of Season 4 of Deep Space Nine. So that is it for my ranking all of the episodes of Season 4 of Deep Space Nine. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment below. If you really like this episode, or like the videos that I do, you could consider supporting me on Patreon. I have different rewards for different tiers, such as pre-releases. You can make comments that I'll read in my videos, and a series of patron-only videos that I release exclusively for Patreon supporters, where I revisit reviews that I've already made. So yeah, you can check that out if you're so inclined to do so. So let's see what's coming up next on my channel. On Saturday, I'll continue with wrapping up this year's Star Trek seasons with ranking all the episodes of Season 2 of Voyager. And then on Monday, I'll talk about shows that have a lot of Star Trek actors in them. And then next Thursday, I'll do another special video on why Voyager's ending was lackluster. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, and many videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.